about stuff that's like, I've done a lot of like emotional work in my life, and I've done a lot of therapy. So and a lot of the things that I've learned, I wouldn't have learned if I didn't hear someone else talk about it first. In fact, one of my like journey to becoming the better person was listening to a talk show where someone related a relevant problem to me, and the host was like, you should read Women Who Love Too Much. And like after I read that book, I got into therapy. All that to say, I do feel very kind of good about talking about these things. So this has been great for me.
Well, this final question comes from Molly, who asks, Dear Hank and Tessa, I'm 23 and my ex-boyfriend of 2 years and I broke up more than 3 months ago. And I'm really struggling with this whole friends thing. He broke up with me and initiated a conversation about a month later, which was fine. I had a conversation about boundaries with him in terms of how much I talk to friends and what it's okay to say, because he was talking to me every day and was saying just odd things. So now we talk like once a week, not scheduled or anything, and I have never wanted our relationship back in the slightest because it was miserable, but every time we talk, I get really preoccupied with just thinking about us. Not in a longing way, it's just really distracting and annoying. I want to be the girl that can be friends with her ex, but why can't I be chill like him? Do you think it's even possible to stay long-term friends with someone you had a serious relationship with? Can't think of a sign-off, Molly.
That was such a sad sign-off. Feeling jolly, Molly.
No, yeah.
Yeah, it's the
couldn't
opposite.
think of that one.
Sorry, I'm leaning away from the microphone because that's helpful. Molly, this is like a very legitimate thing, and when I read this, I really hear you struggling with feeling like if you are honest about being sad or uncomfortable with this, that somehow makes you less chill or less cool or less mature. Maybe you're feeling like if I'm wrapped up in this, then he's the more mature one, and I don't think that's fair at all. A mature thing is to be honest with yourself about how you're feeling, and it sounds like if you're being honest, you don't feel good in this interaction, and that's okay.
Yeah, and it sounds like you didn't have a great productive relationship with this person in the first place. Like you say, I don't want a relationship back because it was miserable. So I think that like it sounds like this communication is bringing you back to that place. It's not like taking you forward out of it. And whenever anyone uses the word miserable, I feel like you should be moving away from that place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem that there's that much tying you together except the shared experience. And that's not nothing. Like, that shared experience does matter, and it is a piece of your life that like shouldn't be considered thrown away or discarded in any way. Like it's always going to be part of you. But I know that it is possible because I've heard people say that they've done it, to have long-term friendships with people they had serious relationships with. I've never done it.
I've never done it. Yeah, I've never done it. And I think that's the norm. And I do think that it does exist. I have a friend who has a friendship with someone they had a relationship with, but I think most people are, if I'm being frank, I think most people are trying to convince themselves they can be friends because they think that's the more mature thing to do. When it's complete, it doesn't mean you think that he's bad or anything. It's okay to just say, hey, our relationship is complex and I want my life to not be complex.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I'll commend you on having that initial conversation with him in the beginning, which I know can be a difficult thing to do, to say like, we need to talk about boundaries.
Yeah.
So I can tell that you can do this.
Yeah, you're doing great, Molly.
You're doing great, Molly. Tessa, we're not going to have any news from Mars and AFC Wimbledon today.
No, we're not. They stopped existing. Mars was canceled.
We recorded this episode well in advance because we needed one for the background, and Tessa was in town. So
yes.
So I really appreciate you hanging out and answering questions with me. It was a real good time.
Yes, thank you for having me. I love answering questions.
But you should listen to Tessa's music.
Yeah, my songs are available everywhere songs are found.
This podcast is edited by Nicholas Jenkins. It's produced by Rosianna Halse-Rojas and Sheridan Gibson. Our head of community and communications is Victoria Bongiorno. The music that you're hearing right now and the beginning of the podcast is by the great Gunnarolla. And as they say in our hometown, don't forget to be awesome. Dear Hank and John is supported by Simple Contacts, the convenient way to renew your prescription and reorder your contacts from anywhere in minutes. Simple Contacts has all of the brands and types of lenses you are familiar with, and you can get $20 off your contacts at simplecontacts.com/DearHank20 or enter code DearHank20 at checkout.
Listener supported. WNYC Studios.
Hello, it's a cold open this week because we have a bit of news. The first bit of news is that Dear Hank and John, as well as the Anthropocene Reviewed and a new podcast called SciShow Tangents, are all going to be joining the WNYC family.
Yeah, WNYC Studios is as you may have heard, an organization that makes and produces and works with lots of great podcasts, and we are joining them. This podcast it will change basically nothing for you, just for clarity, and will make things easier for us and more stable for us, and also potentially help us make better content and maybe even some other projects in the future.
Yeah, we're huge fans and have been for a long time of WNYC. They make podcasts like Radiolab and More Perfect and Nancy. In fact, I've known our producer at WNYC for more than 20 years, all of which means this is really exciting for us, but should not affect your listening experience that much, except insofar as the quality of the audio might improve slightly.
Yeah, if you think that this is going to result in like a fundamentally better Dear Hank and John experience, I've got news for you. This is as good as it could possibly be.
No, yeah,
we've reached it.
We're keeping the podcast crap. Don't worry about that. But thank you to all of you who listen every week. It means the world to us. I also want to say that we're going on tour. Hank is going on a longer tour than I'm going on, but I will be with Hank when An Absolutely Remarkable Thing comes out in New York on Tuesday, September 25th. We'll be in Boston on Wednesday, September 26th.
John and I will also be in Canton, Ohio, Chicago, Illinois, Kansas City, Missouri, and Indianapolis, Indiana. And then I'm moving on by myself and going to have some special guests in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Denver, Los Angeles, San Diego, Santa Cruz, and Bellingham, Washington. So if you're in or near any of those places, please come see me. And if you're in Missoula, Montana, I'll probably do a local event too, but it will be separate and not part of this tour.
So we hope to see lots of you on tour. Now is the time to get tickets, by the way, because many of the shows are very close to selling out. I am so excited for Hank's book, An Absolutely Remarkable Thing. It comes out on September 25th. It is available for pre-order now. I can only say that for a few more days, because soon it will just be available for order. Anyway, let's roll the open.
And welcome to Dear Hank and John.
Or as I prefer to think of it, Dear John and Hank.
It's a comedy podcast where two brothers answer your questions, give you DB's advice, and bring you all the week's news from both Mars and AFC Wimbledon. John.
Yeah.
How do we start this podcast again?
You tell a dad joke. We have never been so unprepared. Sarah has been out of town for the last 5 days, and my circadian rhythms are completely off when Sarah is gone. Like, I go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I have to wake up and take the kids to school, and the kids are like, "What's wrong with you, Dad?" And I'm just like, thank God. Hank, sorry, what just happened?
My circadias are also messed up. They're buzzing all in my brain because I just got back from Australia, and so I spent the hours of 12 to 3 o'clock in the morning this last day awake, very hungry, and eventually eating quite a lot of turkey cold guts. But we start the podcast with a dad joke.
Yeah.
So, John,
yeah.
What noise does a 747 make when it bounces?
What noise does a 747 make when it bounces?
Boing. Boing.
Oh, God.
Don't worry. Next week's dad joke is even better than that one. I got a bunch of collected already. It's great. I'm very excited about this new format.
Oh my God. The Great Barrier Reef is showing signs of recovery in good news.
That's wonderful. I had heard that it was showing signs of the opposite of that.
Well, don't worry. There has been massive coral bleaching in 2016 and 2017. However, due to a milder 2017-2018 summer, you'll recall that down in Australia, summer, goes right. As well as a lot of cooperation among lots of different groups. There has been some recovery in the Great Barrier Reef. Now, the long-term worry is still that these, mild summers may not be a permanent phenomenon. So it's good news, but if we don't stop...
Stop! No, it's just good news, John. It's global warming me.
Okay, it's good news. It's good news. Hank, let's move on to some questions from our listeners.
The worst job we've ever done.
I mean, we have an episode called The Worst Episode Ever, but we might have to update it.
Oh, I didn't know that we had. Well, the good news is that we can always do worse.
All right, Hank, we're going to answer some questions from our listeners, and we're going to do a good job of it because I just gave you a pep talk that I think Nick probably cut out of the podcast, but
it had some curse words in it.
It was a profanity-laden halftime team talk where I was like, Hank, we've got to get into the podcast right now. This question comes from Mary Kate, who asks, Dear John and Hank, I own a tank top that simply says Tuesday on it in big block letters. I've owned it for a while now, but I don't wear it very often because I only feel it's appropriate to wear on Tuesdays. However, I really like the color and comfort of this tank top. Should I wear the tank top on days other than Tuesday, or will that just confuse people? Doobie's advice appreciated. Ashley's sister, Mary Kate. Oh my God, it's from Mary Kate Olsen. Mary Kate Olsen wrote into the pod to ask us a fashion question. That is a surprise.
That is a surprise. So I mean, maybe you should approach this as if you are actually Mary Kate Olsen, which I'm not saying you aren't.
Right.
But say like, look, I am just a tremendously successful actress and business person, and I have done things that no one else has done before, and I was in that very good music video about pizza, and I can do whatever I want. I am Mary Kate Olsen. I just punched my microphone a little bit.
Yeah, well, I can feel the passion. Yeah, you just got to ask yourself, Mary Kate, WWMKOD.
Yeah.
What would Mary Kate Olsen do in this situation? And the answer is that she would wear that tank top.
Yeah.
Almost. She'd probably wear it once because she has a lot of outfits.
She'd set that trend, man. What you got to do is get one for every day of the week, but then never wear them on the right day.
Right. Yeah. No, that's what my son does with his day of the week underwear.
It's a power move. You just everybody will respect you because they'll be like, I'm just very confused when Mary Kate is around.
Yeah. Do you want to know a fascinating fact about Mary Kate Olsen, Hank?
Sure. I mean, always.
Mary Kate Olsen is 32 years old.
Oh, wow.
Do you know how old Ashley Olsen is?
It's a good joke, John. You really sold that one.
Let's move on to the next question. There's a bunch of people out there, by the way, who have no idea who Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen are.
Yeah.
Do not know that they are twins. Did not get that joke until I just explained that they are twins.
Now you know.
For context, the reason it's so alarming to Hank and me that Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen are 32 years old is that...
No, we don't need to continue explaining this.
No, Hank,
just
jokes...
look it up. If you're confused, look it up.
Hank, jokes get funnier when you explain them more. Everyone knows that. That's one of the...
This next question comes from Ward. It's going to shut you up. My mom just started a choir with her colleagues from work, and they are terrible. They practice at home, and it's hard to avoid the noise. This on its own isn't a problem. I'm glad that you think so, Ward. You can always put the podcast in. But, Ward says, I sing in a pretty good choir myself, so my mom sees me as the authority on choir music and asks for my advice or to listen for mistakes. If I would be honest, I would say the whole thing is a mistake, but they're clearly having fun and I don't want to ruin it for them. How do I give advice that doesn't hurt feelings but is still somewhat helpful? Ward and of the North.
Hank, before I answer this question, can I just note that maybe we've been doing such a terrible job of the pod so far because we're trying to reassure people that the fact that we're now a fancy WNYC podcast does not mean that we're going to be good.
Yeah, It's like, so we're partnering with WNYC, and we want to give you a really subpar product right now, so you don't think anything's changing.
Ward, you have to tell your mother, I'm glad you're having fun. It sounds like you're having fun, and things that are technically true while also not being cruel. And if she asks you, how is the quality of our singing, you can say, like, I mean, I don't think that you're a professional choir, but I don't think you're trying to be. You're having fun.
Ward, maybe you should go to, I don't know, someone who is more expert than us, like your choir director, who is a person that you, I assume, know, and then lay out the sitch and say, like, you know, that, like, that person is probably aware of how to deal with singers at all levels. And maybe there is some insight you can get from there. But I think John's right. Like, ultimately, things like this don't have to be about perfection. They can be about fun. And so keep that in mind. And, you know, be supportive of the fun that the people in your lives want to have.
Hank, I think it's terrible advice to go to your choir director or to go to anyone with more expertise than we have, because all that does is undercut our brand as providing high-quality advice on a variety of topics that we have no expertise in.
Yeah, because I really can't tell you how to direct a choir, Ward.
Well, but you also can't tell Mary-Kate Olsen how to wear a tank top, but that's not slowing you down.
I can totally do that, because I have worn tank tops, John. I've done that. I've never directed a choir.
I mean, I would submit that you are not an expert in wearing tank tops based on every single time I have ever seen you wear a tank top.
When was the last time you saw me wear a tank top, John?
It's been a long time, but it is seared in my memory because you do not look... I say this with a lot of respect and admiration for you as a person, but you cannot pull off a tank top.
I think that most of the time when I put on tank tops, they look good if I'm also wearing a shirt underneath. Is that right?
No. Mary-Kate, whatever Hank said about when to wear your Tuesday tank top, you need to do the opposite.
I don't know. It just like it kind of like tugs the shirt onto you more firmly, and then you've got sort of a real good situation on the top half.
Yeah, you wear an undershirt over your regular shirt. That's why they call it an overshirt.
I'm doing that every day of tour now. It's my new thing.
Oh God,
Somebody send me some tank tops.
Please don't do that. It drives
Come out
me
on
crazy.
stage and be like, hello, my name is Hank. I'm a very serious author, man.
Oh.
You could tell because of... It's like how Neil Gaiman like started wearing leather all the time, and they were like, oh, Neil Gaiman is like the cool leather guy. He's like an author, and he's awesome, and he like writes really good books, but also he's like cool looking and maybe a little bit like... I'm a little afraid because he's like, I don't know, there's some kind of like dark vibe going on there, but I'm going to be the guy in like the tank top over the t-shirt, and people are going to think something about that.
Yeah, they'll think something about it.
And that's all that matters, John, that people are thinking something about me. It's the only commodity we have left.
That is genuinely what an absolutely remarkable thing is about. So I guess it would be on brand. This next question comes from Kelly, who writes, Dear John and Hank, what is the worst snack you've ever had? I ask because the world needs more cautionary tales on bad snacks. On a road trip, I once had a bag of fish jerky and washed it down with stevia-sweetened root beer. Hey, don't say anything bad about stevia-sweetened root beer, Kelly. Come on.
Fish jerky is not a thing, is it? That's the worst thing I've ever heard. You know what I've always think about fish is can we contract the flavor part? I want more of the flavor part.
No.
Oh my God.
No. The worst snack that I've ever had by a very wide margin. When Sarah and I started dating, she was working at an art gallery, and I went to all of the art gallery shows because I wanted her to like me. And one of them was a performance piece. I like performance art, like the idea of it. I don't like experiencing performance art because a lot of times the artist interacts with the audience, which is the thing that makes me most uncomfortable in the entire world. Mm-hmm. So it's like being at a play where you are told 5 seconds before the play starts that you are in fact an actor in the play. And there was this artist, and he was interacting with the audience, and he was sort of like weaving around them, and he would get his face really up close to your face, and you'd have to like not scrunch your face in fear because you wanted to look like you were cool and a regular person and not the kind of person, you know, who freaks out when people are in your personal space. And then he handed me a piece of candy, and I was like, yeah, okay. And everyone else was unwrapping their candy, so I was like, fine, okay, I'll unwrap my candy. And everyone else put it in their mouths, and I was like, oh God, I gotta put this strange man's candy in my mouth. And I put it in my mouth, and it was crab flavored.
Oh man, I thought it was just gonna be regular candy, and it was the worst snack because the strange man put it into your mouth, but it was crab candy
Crab
too.
candy. It was crab candy. It was crab candy. And I mean, I had to sit there and suck on this crab candy for like 12 minutes because I didn't want to be rude and spit it out.
Oh, that's the societal pressure is amazing, John. It will make you do anything. There are so many things that we will do because it just seems like it's what's expected of us. And this is the most extreme example I've ever heard of that.
Afterwards, the artist was completely normal. And he was just like hanging out, having a glass of wine with me. And he was like, what'd you think of the candy? And I was like, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it was good. Sure.
You didn't say it was bad?
No, just as I told Ward not to tell his mom that her choir is bad.
But the guy didn't make the candy.
What's the worst snack you ever had?
What's the worst snack I ever had? I don't know. So in these like brief moments before I'm officially sponsored by Metamucil. Before I sign the contract, they make these little Metamucil wafers that are supposed to be cookies, and it's a huge lie. And there's like people in my office eat them because Metamucil sent us a bunch of them, and if you are very hungry, they are food.
Right.
But I find them to be much less enjoyable than just the normal Metamucil powder because it just like the whole experience stays in your mouth for a much longer time, and you have to be careful. If you put the whole thing in there at once, it expands, man. That's the whole point of psyllium husk, is that it gets bigger and it absorbs a lot of water, and then suddenly you're like, I can't. My mouth is now all this and nothing. If you put 2 of those things in your mouth, you might not live. There's a warning on the box. I'm not even kidding.
I can't wait till you are in an actual television commercial for this actual product. And you're like, Metamucil wafers, they're delicious. Don't eat 2. Oh man, this is
not
why
the worst snack I've ever had, though. John, you also left off the last half of this question. First of all, I looked up fish jerky. It's totally a thing, and it actually looks pretty good. I saw some. I was like, doesn't look bad, and it was $25, and you get free shipping if you pay that much.
You better.
But I do also have to bring up that the situation was made even less palatable for Kelly by the 100-plus coyote scats baking in the trunk of their car, which they were transporting for thesis research. And also, the NAMM-specific sign-off is Cheers, Smelly Kelly. I just didn't want to leave that not in everybody's brains, because I'm happy that it was in mine. I just think that people do such important work, John, and sometimes it means transporting a lot of coyote poop.
Can you imagine how unexpected a turn of events it must be for one of those mice that got eaten by that coyote that then got pooped out that then ended up in Kelly's trunk?